there. So today we are continuing our series on towards better health. So today we'll be talking about public health. So in our previous video we talked about personal health. Today we'll be talking about public health and the ways we can maintain public health. Now the following things are important in the maintenance of a good public health. One is refuse and sewage disposal. Then the protection of water supply and provision of clean water. Also food hygiene, then control of diseases and health organizations. Let me take that again. So these are the important things in maintenance of a good public health. One, refuse and sewage disposal. Two, the protection of water supply and provision of clean water. Then food hygiene, then control of diseases and health organizations. So today's video, we'll be talking about one of these important things in maintaining public health. I'll be starting with the first one, which is refuse disposal. Now, what is refuse? Refuse can be defined as solid waste materials or dry or wet solid waste that is collected from markets, homes, hospitals, offices, factories, industries. So this refuse can be collected from anywhere, but we're talking about dry or wet solid waste materials. For example, we have waste paper, food, cans, cobs of maize, yam, cassava peels. So just once it is dry waste, we are talking that is refuse. So today we want to talk about disposal of refuse. How can refuse be disposed of properly? Now in rural areas, mostly each household is responsible for disposing its own refuse. Now it can be done by burning, can be done by burying or composting. Now dry refuse such as paper, husks of food are usually burnt. So things like paper, husk of maybe maize, or once it is dry refuse, those ones can be burnt. Now refuse that cannot be burnt, such as glass and metal, those ones are buried in a piece of land that is a wasteland, a land that is not being used. So it is dug and is buried. So refuse that cannot be burnt, like glass and metal, we bury them. That's in rural areas. Then also waste vegetable and food matter, dry leaves and animal dung, those things that can decompose, are placed in pits, and we line these pits with stones. So we spray the refuse with sewage so that it can start and speed up the decay. So we take materials that can decay and that can decompose, like waste food, waste vegetable, dry leaves, and animal dung. We place them in pits, and we line those pits with stones. Then after that, we spray this. We spray it with sewage, and we do that to start or speed up the decay, and we cover it with soil to prevent flies from breeding. So in time, this refuse rots and forms compost, and this compost can be mixed with soil to improve it for cultivation. So when this is dug and buried, after some time, it can be changed into compost, and this compost can be used to improve the soil fertility, and we can use it as a form of manure. Now in urban areas, refuse is stored by each household in covered bins. Like rural areas, we have bins, refuse bins and refuse cans in urban areas. So they are stored in these bins. Then this refuse is collected regularly by refuse lorries and disposed of by either burning it in incinerators, dumping it in a sanitary landfill or controlled tipping, or by emptying it into the sea. So let's talk about these methods of disposing the refuse that is collected into these places. So let's start with incinerators. Now, in many countries, the way refuse is disposed is by burning it completely in incinerators at high temperatures. Now, this burning, components of the refuse, such as cans, bottles, and plastics, are separated. So when before we burn, we separate things like plastic, cans, bottles. so that we can either pulverize them or take them to a recycling plant for recycling. So before we burn refuse in incinerators, we make sure we separate it, we sort it. So refuse such as cans and bottles and plastics are separated and they are pulverized or taken to a recycling plant for recycling. Now, incineration contributes to air pollution because obviously we're talking about burning. But most modern incinerators are actually fitted with anti-pollution devices to reduce the pollution caused to the environment. But these modern incinerators are actually very expensive to construct. So most countries or developing countries, underdeveloped countries still make use of the old or the older incinerators. So it still causes pollution. So that's the danger of using incinerators or the incineration method. Now, the other method we can make use of, another method in the dumping of refuse, in disposal of refuse, is dumping of refuse. Now, this is the easiest method of refuse disposal. Refuse is just packed and dumped in a particular place, but this method is not really suitable because, one, refuse dumps are unsightly. They are not a good sight. When you see a refuse dump, it's very terrible to look at. They are unsightly. Also, they produce unpleasant smells. The smells from refuse dumps are very terrible. So it's not a good method. Also, they are very unsanitary. So dumping of this refuse harbors vectors that can cause diseases. So dumping of refuse is unsanitary. So that's why this method is not really effective or suitable. Also, a large area of land is needed to store or dump refuse. A very large area of land is needed to store or dump refuse. So this method is not that suitable for disposing refuse. Another method we can use instead of incineration or dumping of refuse is the sanitary landfill or controlled tipping. Now, this method is an acceptable method of refuse disposal. In this method, what we do is refuse is buried in pits that are made by mining or other activities, or we bury refuse in low-lying wastelands or swamps or marshes. So we can bury refuse in this method, and this method is more acceptable because it creates less problems than, for example, dumping of refuse. So this is a very acceptable means of refuse disposal. The way we use this method is that the refuse is first tipped onto the site thoroughly, and it's thoroughly compacted with the help of tractor. So we compact it with the help of a tractor. Then we immediately cover it with a layer of earth. Then we cover it with several layers of earth. Then each layer is allowed to settle before another layer is placed on top of it. So that's what we call sanitary landfill or controlled tipping. Those are the methods of disposing refuse disposal. That's the end of today's video. In our next video, we'll be talking about sewage disposal. So see you in our next video. Bye for now.